Hey ladies, in this section we are talking about the stationery, which includes the save the dates, the wedding invitations, and the wedding programs. So, general questions that I want you to be able to ask yourself and your fiance is what we'll cover first, and then we will break it down into separate sections for the save the dates, for the wedding invitations, for the wedding programs. So the first set of general questions that I want you to ask yourself and your fiance is, do you have engagement photos that you want to be used on the save the dates and the wedding invitations? So for James and I, our turnaround time from our engagement to our wedding was 5 months. So we didn't even have enough time to schedule our engagement photos and put them on our save the dates. So we just used a photo from the actual proposal for our save the date. But generally, we in the wedding industry see engagement photos ending up on the save the date invitations and sometimes even the wedding invitations. So, do you have any engagement photos that you want used? Secondly, what is our budget for the stationery? So, what's the budget for the save the dates, the wedding invitations, and the wedding programs? You might even include thank you notes and postage in there as well. What is the range of our guest list? Are many of them technologically competent, meaning would they be able to navigate a wedding website in order to RSVP or find our registry and hotel accommodations or locate wedding day details? Sometimes guests that are older, they don't know how to navigate a wedding website and they just want a phone call to call and RSVP. So I say that because typically you will include your wedding website on your wedding invitations. That way people indeed know to refer to your wedding website to RSVP. All right, would it be better for our guests if we include more of the above information on a physical additional printed section in our wedding invitation? So that might be helpful for those older guests if you include those additional fillers in your wedding invitation regarding the hotel block of rooms or the registry or phone numbers on who to RSVP to. So that might be an option. As well as for our save the dates, was sending a digital invitation be an option. So if you are trying to really save money and you don't want to send out and print save the dates and put postage on everything, then maybe you can send out a digital invitation. I've seen it done. That's not super common as it's not very formal, but it could be an option for you. And then the next question, are we going to create our save the dates, wedding invitations, and wedding programs ourselves? You can actually do that. That's what I did. I used programs like Vistaprint and Shutterfly. Or are you going to have a professional design and print them for you? You don't have to go to a professional, and that might save you some money in the long run, especially if you buy in bulk. So those are the general questions for you to review between you and your soon-to-be spouse. And now let's continue on into separate sections, breaking down the save the dates, the wedding invites, and the wedding programs. Let's first talk about the save the dates. So what do you need on save the dates? Honestly, save the dates are very, very basic. So you'll just need the couple's names, first and last names for both of you, the wedding date that the wedding will be on, as well as the city and the state that it will be held in. You don't even have to have the venue figured out by that point. You just have to have the city and the state that it will be held in. And then you can also include your wedding website address if you would like, and a note that the wedding invitation will follow. So if you can see, I will post photos of these for you to reference, but this is our save the date. It's really small. It's basic. It just says save the date for the wedding of James Ellis III and Jasmine Fielberth, Saturday, June 13th, 2020, Napney, Indiana. That's all the information that was on here. So it's very, very basic. Questions for you guys to ask each other. Do you have any engagement photos that you want to use on your save the date? This works so well if you have a longer engagement because you can schedule your engagement photos and use them on your save the date. Obviously, our engagement was 5 months long, and so we didn't have enough turnaround time to get our engagement photos done and put them on our save the date. How much money are you planning to spend on your save the dates? So if you go to professional graphic designer or printer, you'll probably spend more money. If you use websites like Shutterfly or Vistaprint, you can save more money because you're buying in bulk and you are doing the designing yourself. Are you using a wedding website? Are you planning on putting all the information on a wedding website? If so, make sure if you're including the wedding website on your save the date that all of your guest information has been entered into the RSVP section on your wedding website before these save the dates get mailed out or before the invites get out, because that would be really, really frustrating for guests if they're like, I'm trying to RSVP, but nothing's working. You have to do the work ahead of time before you actually mail them out. How tech savvy are most of your guests? Would they be able to handle a wedding website RSVP, or are they going to need more instructions actually physically printed and mailed to them? Would you consider sending a digital invite only like we talked about? And are you designing the save the dates yourself, or is someone else going to design them for you? So I obviously just told you if you buy in bulk, the price of the save the dates go down. And normally they will come with envelopes as well, so you don't have to buy extra envelopes. But the save the dates for the stationery, you can go many different routes. You can do either traditional and more formal, or you can go more contemporary, or you can go more informal. It all depends on you and what your style of wedding is. When you're addressing the save the dates, some people use calligraphy, which is the fancy writing. Some people go basic and go with printed labels. So pre-printed labels are really great for the return address, especially because you don't have to write your address over and over. It might be more personal if you handwrite the guests' names though. However, for the save the dates, I definitely recommend mailing save the dates out between 4 and 6 months prior to the wedding. I would say closer to 6 months before the wedding. If you're having a destination wedding that's out of state or even out of the country, then mail your save the dates closer to a year before the wedding, because people may have to schedule time off of work, save up money, and ultimately plan to go on a trip for your wedding. So generally though, save the dates get sent out 6 months before the wedding. And as you can see, in comparison to the wedding invitation, the save the date is actually smaller. Sometimes wedding invitations can get too big or too heavy, and they will require more postage. So stick with something smaller in all areas of the stationery and you will save some money. So that is all the information I have for you regarding save the dates. Let's continue on to the wedding invitations. Now let's talk about the wedding invitations. So the essentials to make sure you have on your wedding invitations: obviously the couple's names, so first and last names, the wedding date and the time of the ceremony, as well as the venue name, address, city, state, all that fun stuff, as well as RSVP instructions. So if you have a specific phone number you want them to call to RSVP, or if you want them to RSVP on your wedding website, include this information, as well as any reception details, or at least the saying that says reception to follow. So optional items you can include on your wedding invitations are obviously the wedding website address. You can also print an additional filler that you stuff into the invitation that has the wedding website information on it. Additional printouts that you can include with the invitation itself are hotel accommodations. So maybe a list of hotels in the area, or at least the hotels that you have set up a block of rooms at. You can also include directions on another printout, so directions to the wedding or a map. And let's see, you can also, you'll have to be very organized and make sure you don't send these details to everyone, but to the people you know are going to be invited to the rehearsal dinner or maybe a day after the wedding brunch, you can include details for those events as well and information on those events. You can include a printout for those and stuff them into the wedding invitation for those specific guests. Obviously, that information does not go to everybody, only to those people that are invited to those particular exclusive events. So when you are having your wedding invitations designed, there is actual different wording on wedding invitations. You can look all that up on the internet. It's very different, and there are many different wordings that you can choose for your wedding invitation. Now, I actually designed our wedding invitations on, I think it was either Shutterfly or Vistaprint, so this saves a lot of money. You don't have to go to a professional graphic designer or printer. You can design them yourself. So this is actually what our wedding invitation looked like on the front as well as on the back. So it's great to use engagement photos on your wedding invitation as well if you want. Sometimes wedding invitations get super formal though, and pictures aren't included on invites, so it's up to you. Like I said, buying in bulk on Shutterfly or Vistaprint makes the cost go down more. So the Stationery, you can go more traditional and formal with your invitations. I've seen even little enclosures in invitations that have pre-postage stamps already on this little envelope that has a little card that check yes or no if you're attending the wedding and how many are going to be in your party. And you already have the address for that bride and groom on it, and you just mail it back to them right away. So they went through all those extra steps to make sure that people RSVP efficiently. All right, you can include your wedding website on the invitation. Just make sure it looks good. You can also just include your wedding website URL on an additional printout that you stuff into the invitation. As far as addressing the invitations themselves, I've seen fancy handwriting like calligraphy used. Some people just go the pre-printed label route though, which is totally fine if that's more your style. It used to be much more formal, but these days I've seen almost everything under the sun. So definitely pre-printed labels are great for return addresses, so you're not handwriting your address every time. And then you already have pre-printed labels to use for save the dates, the wedding invites, and the thank you notes. So mail your wedding invitations earlier once again if you have a destination wedding that will be out of state or out of country. Additionally, if you decide to purchase a wedding invitation that is bigger than most normal sizes, you will have to pay more postage. That will cost you more, obviously. So make sure you also watch the weight of the enclosures in the envelopes. So if you have additional, the RSVP little envelope I was telling you about, or an enclosure with directions, an enclosure about the hotel accommodations, this is going to make it way more, which will require more postage. Just be aware of that. And this can also, you can also save yourself a lot of money by not having to put enclosures like that in your wedding invitations and just including that information on the wedding website itself. So I am not going to go into how to address people like with Mr. or Mrs. or Mr. and Mrs. Bob so-and-so. I absolutely suggest you look those up on the internet because it completely changes and the formality behind it changes and how people do it changes. So I just recommend you look that up when you are actually beginning to address the invitations. The little envelope that I told you about for the RSVPs are normally called response cards. So they already have a stamp on it, they're already addressed, and it makes it very simple and quick for your guests to quickly fill out and throw in the mail. Then you don't have to track down your guests and see if they're actually coming to your wedding or not. So you typically mail out your wedding invitations between 6 and 8 weeks before the wedding. So that's roughly a month and a half to 2 months out. That's the general time frame. And so since your guests have already received a save the date invitation, they already know that that date is reserved for your wedding. Now the wedding invitation is the formal invitation to your wedding with more details or a way for them to find out more details. So that is all the information I have for you regarding the wedding invitations. Now let's move on to the wedding programs. I wanted to do a specific section on wedding programs because sometimes these can get overlooked because you're thinking only about invitations and you get so close to your wedding date that you're like, oh my goodness, this slipped my mind. I forgot about these. So print these closer to the wedding though. You don't have to do this way far in advance because you need time to figure out the order of the ceremony and the music that you're going to include and the wedding party attendance. So this is what ours looked like, and I'll include a photo. So we have the order of our wedding ceremony over here, additional information about the reception saying it will immediately follow the ceremony and the address for it, as well as a thank you to all of our guests. And then I have the wedding party, all their names and their roles in the wedding. So it's very simple, and I did wait to print those closer to the wedding because I was still figuring out what songs we wanted to include, what the specific order of the ceremony was going to be. And since we planned our wedding in COVID season, we didn't know who was actually going to be able to make it to our wedding or not. Or who was going to be in the wedding, I should say, or not. So that's why we waited to print closer to the actual wedding date. I highly suggest that. That way you don't have anything that is an error printed in them that you can't fix once they're printed. They are cheaper when you buy them in bulk, and you can definitely design them yourself. So I believe I used either Shutterfly or Vistaprint, and it worked really well, very simple. And you can definitely add photos to the wedding program. Just like I did, I put an engagement photo of James and I on the front of the program to make it more personal. And like I mentioned to you, I added a thank you letter in it for people to thank them for coming to the wedding, as well as the reception information following the ceremony. That way they have the address and don't get lost. So this is all the information you really need to know about the wedding program itself. Additional stationery that can be added into the budget is for thank you notes. So you have thank you notes for your bridal shower, possibly your bachelorette party, definitely for your wedding. So, and then thank you notes for anyone who helped out on your wedding day that you want to personally tell them that you appreciate them. So you can order thank you notes that are personalized, that have your engagement photos on them, or you can buy them super cheap in bulk to save money. So just be aware that the postage does add up. You may be spending several $100s on stamps. Just gonna let you know that. But this is pretty much all the information that you need to get started on stationery. It's really fun to design your own, make them unique to you and your fiance and your wedding. So enjoy creating your save the dates, wedding invitations, and the wedding programs. And you will be writing a lot of thank you notes also, so get some fun thank you notes. Hey ladies, so I actually have an additional video for you in this section, so I figured why not just record another video so I can tell you more information and show you some examples. So after I recorded the first video, I got some examples in the mail of new weddings that we are invited to, and I wanted to show you these. So I want to show you this wedding invitation. Look how fancy they went. I'm showing you this because I already showed you how I designed our wedding invitations, and they were kind of basic, but these people, they went so fancy that their wedding invitation literally arrived in a box. So when you open this box, you pull out this humongous invitation that is so beautiful. Look at this. It is amazing. This is how fancy some people go. So you have free reign to go as fancy as you want. So when we opened this, there was included different papers. Like, this is a separate paper that I'm pulling out. I'm not going to show you the invitation or the information, but it's a separate paper that includes details about the hotel accommodations, their registry information, and the attire dress code for the wedding. There was yet an additional piece of paper, like fancy paper. This isn't like actual paper. This is very fancy, and it's actually glittery. Awesome. So there was an additional little piece of paper for information for us to RSVP, to put how many of us will be attending and if we are agreeing to come or declining with regret. It came with a little envelope that already had postage on it for us to be able just to slip the RSVP in the envelope and send it in the mail. Now, this scroll, when we undid it and pulled it open, it was actually the wedding invitation. Like, how fancy is that? It is so awesome. And it's just beautiful. So I wanted to show you an example of how fancy you can actually go with a wedding invitation. I know, it's so beautiful. And so I additionally wanted to show you a rehearsal invite. So on the back of the rehearsal invite, it actually specifies who is invited to their rehearsal and rehearsal dinner. This is what I was talking about in this class, that sometimes people don't know like who's actually invited to the rehearsal dinner. And so you can include information for the rehearsal dinner along with your wedding invitations. And this is a great example of that, by just specifying who is actually invited, because sometimes it's just the bridesmaid and her husband, or the groomsman and his girlfriend, that are invited to the rehearsal and rehearsal dinner. Sometimes the children aren't invited. So this is great just to clarify. That way people don't show up to the rehearsal dinner expecting a meal and then you don't have a meal for them. So I figured it was worth recording another video just to show you those great examples. And now feel free to head to the next section.